when we were at 68, 69,000 on Bitcoin, and everyone was saying, I mean, literally I would go on Twitter and it was like 100,000 by the end of November, 250,000 by the end of December. Like, I mean, it was just like everyone was just banking on it. And that always concerns me. When everyone's in one direction, you want to be careful. You want to be a little bit more conservative. And when it's mixed, you got to just kind of do your own research. And when it's very much the other way, just flip it around and go back and forth. Again, sentiment is a big indicator in the markets.
The world's leading cryptocurrency by market capitalization has fascinated the financial world with its volatile yet promising trajectory. Gareth Soloway, a master trader, provides unique insights into chart analysis and macro data that are unparalleled in depth and accessible to the public. The path of Bitcoin is filled with uncertainties. Key levels like $40,000, $45,000, and potentially $47,500 and $50,000 carry substantial technical and psychological significance along Bitcoin's journey. While it's hard to predict how high Bitcoin can go in every new bull cycle, the crypto community expects that in 2024, the top cryptocurrency will reach its previous all-time high of $69,000. Soloway observes that Bitcoin is presently in a consolidation phase, lacking a definitive direction in its movement. Bitcoin price predictions for 2024 vary widely, ranging from as low as $30,000 to as high as $120,000 per Bitcoin. Mike Novogratz, the founder of Galaxy Digital, suggests that if spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds get the green light from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, Bitcoin could soar to $70,000 in value. Meanwhile, Plan B, a renowned analyst recognized for the Bitcoin stock-to-flow model, has published a Bitcoin price forecast projecting a potential surge to $100,000 in 2024. Adding to these predictions, British lender Standard Chartered anticipates Bitcoin will hit the $100,000 milestone by the end of 2024, signaling the end of the so-called crypto winter. Soloway anticipates that this period of consolidation might culminate in two possible scenarios: an upward surge, potentially revisiting peak levels at approximately $44,000 to $45,000, and a downward movement finding stability near $38,000. Now, let's focus on the video to explore more. Before we get started, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon for the latest updates.
Bitcoin just continuing to chop around here, folks. There's not a whole lot for me to give you updates on Bitcoin. Again, we've talked about how you had this move up. This was the beginnings of a bull flag. Then it failed. Then you started a bear flag. Then that failed. Now you're just going here, but now it looks like it's failing here. And basically, when you get this type of action as a technician, you can't try to make a mountain out of a molehill. You just have to say, listen, it's a chop shop. That's what it is. And so what you want to do is you want to then say, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, basically what you can do is you can draw a trend line like this, right? And then take this and do a trend line down like this. And essentially, and it's not the greatest of wedge patterns I just drew, but essentially that's what it's becoming now. You're just getting a lot of this chop in here, right? Which is now just consolidation. And the question remains, do we break to the upside or do we break to the downside? Upside break, you retest the highs here at around 44 to 45,000. If that breaks, you go to 48 to 50, which is my max move on Bitcoin in the near term at least. And if you break to the downside, we know where support is, right? You have this level and this level. They're both converging. We can just extend those out here. And it basically gives us $38,000 target to the downside. So that would be basically your support and resistance. Now, again, you might say, hey, well, what about in 6 months from now? What about in a year? Where's Bitcoin? Those, I have my own perceptions on. But the shortest, and this is going to be important, folks, the shortest predictions are going to be the most accurate. And the reason they're so accurate, and again, if you look at my short-term, like day trading track record, 95%, right? Swing trading track record, 80%. If you look at my longer-term projections, that's where it probably gets towards like 60, 65%. And the concept is this, is that the longer you hold a trade or you're looking out in terms of distance, you know what happens? You have more variables that can change. Like, for instance, over the last few years, Russia invaded Ukraine. Hamas struck Israel and created this now war between Hamas and Israel, right? I mean, there's lots of different things that we just don't know, right? COVID, how many people went in, 6 months ahead of even it hitting China and was like, oh, that next year we're going to have this monster flush and then this massive bull run? Almost no one, right? Because no one could predict that because it was so far out. So always remember that the short-term predictions are going to be the most accurate because you basically have the least amount of time where something can adjust in the charts versus the long term. And that's a good, and this is the thing, guys. Everyone's asking me, right? I go on all these interviews and all these other things, and they're like, oh, where do you see gold by the end of 2024? Where do you see Bitcoin by the end of 2024? And I give my opinion, right? But in reality, the odds of that being correct are much, much lower than something like KBH's chart, which we're looking for a pullback in the next 1 week period, right? That's a very short-term boom type thing. And same thing with natural gas, right? Natural gas, if it puts in a bottoming tail for the next couple of weeks, you're bullish on natural gas. Who the heck knows where natural gas is in 12 months from now, right? I certainly don't. Okay, I just want to make that clear because I think that's a really important thing to grasp when you're talking about charting. And that goes for everyone. Everyone's getting asked. All the analysts, all the talking heads, all the influencers are giving their opinion for the whole next year. The accuracy level is going to be like this. It's just the nature of it.
On Wednesday, Fed policymakers left their benchmark interest rate unchanged as expected. However, the comments that followed from Jerome Powell and the company took markets a bit by surprise. Powell struck a dovish tone as he telegraphed 3 rate cuts in 2024. Traders are anticipating a substantial likelihood of even more cuts. According to trader and market commentator Gareth Soloway, the Fed may be under political pressure ahead of the 2024 election to keep the economy propped up and the government's borrowing costs down. The next Federal Open Market Committee meeting will be held on January 30th to 31st, 2024. This is one of the critical dates that investors, economists, and policymakers mark on their calendars. Many experts expect the Fed to hold rates steady at a target of 5.25% to 5.50%, but the FOMC has signaled several rate cuts through 2024 as inflation eases and the economy slows, although they will proceed carefully. We've got a few clips. Let's focus on those.
Literally, we had Jerome Powell coming out 2 days ago and saying 3 rate hikes next year, inflation, all this stuff. Well, guess what? Literally like 15 minutes ago, before this broadcast, Fed President Williams was on CNBC, and he's talking the opposite. He's walking back everything that Jerome Powell just said. He said it's too early to talk about rate cuts. We're still going to be this. We're still going to be strong. We're going to do that. Everything that literally he said. And I got to just throw more shit at the camera, right? Because this is just like... So all of a sudden, you had the futures higher today, right? And basically, we saw the futures now starting to sell off because he's walking back everything that was just said. It's really remarkable. And I don't know what they're smoking there at the Federal Reserve or what their ultimate motives are. Obviously, Jerome Powell carries the most weight, right? He's the Fed president. But my guess is that Jerome Powell was like, wow, I really didn't know the markets would react so bullishly and we'd start hitting all-time highs on the Dow and get close on the NASDAQ and the S&P. Maybe you, Fed President William, should go out and talk it down a little bit. And it's like, dude, how do you not know that a pivot like that literally surprised, I talked to Mike McGlone, Scott Milker, I've talked to big Wall Street players. This shocked us all, and somehow it didn't register to him that it would have this reaction. And now the markets are going up, which is going to be inflationary, right? The wealth effect. You look at your 401k, holy cow, I have all-time high money in my 401k, and it's Christmas time. You know what? Let me go out and buy that next, that next TV, that next car, whatever it is. Okay, now the demand goes, and we know inflation is a supply and demand side thing. So when there's a ton of demand, then you create an issue where if there's not enough supply, prices go up, right?
Former U.S. President Donald Trump was never a fan of cryptocurrency. But hedge fund Van Eck says his re-election in 2024 could launch Bitcoin's price into six-figure territory. Bitcoin price predictions for 2024 vary widely, ranging from as low as $30,000 to as high as $120,000 per Bitcoin. How far might Bitcoin go, and what triggers might bring the most significant crypto to new heights? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you found this content informative, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for the latest updates. Thank you for being here with us.